Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Weekend.
Weekend too.
We can do anything we want. It's time for Dingers.
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats. What's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement. Check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see. What's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head. Please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers. Ain't no minor league. This is major. Yeah, Dingers. Let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Bryce Terang that wins you championships. That's why week in and week out, we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. Tyler Child's joined as always by Robbie Baseball from the basement, where he will find himself in our home league post draft after having to draft out of his pocket.
Wow.
So it's not as bad as. Well, I figured I would also pick on the big shortstop that made the team out of camp, Bryce Terang as well. Figured we'd touch on that right off the hop.
Yeah, worthy, because you said earlier in this offseason that you liked Terang to make it, and Milwaukee went and crowded that infield, and I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on there. They are just going to be like Platoon City. Turns out they may very well do that, but with a lot of different players than I originally suspected, which is great because I like player movement. So
I cannot for the life of me figure out what they're doing. I just don't get it. I want to see it. Obviously, we've talked about Keston Hira. He's needs to be gone. He is not what anybody wanted him to be. At the very least, he needs to go find a new hitting coach. That we can agree on.
Maybe he was DFA'd. He's since cleared waivers today, and Milwaukee signed Luke Voigt. So
wait, here cleared waivers? He's got the 2.2. Yeah, he's got the 2.2 on the hook, doesn't he?
It's a 24-hour, whatever it was that he had, something like that. But yeah, he's cleared, which is extra sad for me because in the 1 points league that I have very good pitching, Tristan McKenzie is going to miss time, and that sucks. And thankfully in the home league, I chose not to take him. I had him last year, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to try something different this year because everybody I liked last year didn't end up getting me wins. So I got to try some different guys that might have, a little more of this, a little less of that.
And to be fair, he went super early in our home league. Probably
he did. He was like fourth overall, no, fifth overall, something like that. And I picked third, and I took George Kirby. Love that. Happy with that.
Well, and I told you this on Saturday night when you did make it out to join us, but throughout that draft, your draft board just got assassinated.
It did.
And to the point where the guys I was sitting beside, I had made the comment, Rob probably thinks I'm telling you guys this, verbatim, because you guys are just killing the guys that he would reach for, way before the reach is appropriate.
Yeah,
they were going so early.
And even defending league champ Smitty said to me afterwards, I mean, with that mustache of his, oh my goodness. But he's like, I don't even care. This between round 6 and 11, guys are just going to start reaching. And I'm looking at him round 1, everyone started reaching. What are you talking about? Round 6 through 11. So just for context, we keep 6 guys plus a rookie. So we've got about, in a 14 team league, we got about 100 guys that are kept. So really we're picking from say 90 onward in round 1. And we're getting guys who had ADPs north of 160, 180 that are getting picked. And as well, just crafty veterans falling. And then one of the ones that fell a lot that to me, I picked my first baseman was Josh Bell. I picked him earlier than I wanted, but at the same time, I was I just don't want to draft Ryan Mountcastle, even though I like Ryan Mountcastle. I have enough of him in Dynasty. I don't want him in the home league. I had him last year, and I just didn't want him. And he just went way later than I thought he would and should have. But I guess in our league, a lot of the keepers were first baseman, and he doesn't have multi-position eligibility. So maybe he wasn't seen as hot a target as I originally thought, because I didn't have a first baseman. So,
well, I think there's two parts for me. The wall clearly impacted him last year, right? He didn't reach the upside he could have reached if the wall was in the same spot it was the previous year in Baltimore. I think the other part is think everybody and their uncle thinks Baltimore's going to fall back just a little bit. I think they are too. I think what we saw in the last half, I think we're going to see kind of the flip. I think the first half is going to be weak for Baltimore, and I think the second half is going to be a little bit of a strong finish. They might be a spoiler down the stretch for a lot of teams, but I think when it comes to Mount Kessel, I think that's a big reason why is everybody thinks that recoil is coming, and he's going to have some lower numbers than maybe people are projecting. I think that's the feel. Whether that's accurate or not, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, this is the quickest we've talked baseball on our baseball podcast from the hop in a long time. We've skipped the thing that I came here really to do. So can we circle back to it?
Well, I was going to have a better segue than that. We're home doing this, and we're going to continue that trend here today.
A long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. Today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
Beautiful. That was the one thing I didn't get to do on the weekend, Robbie, was have a bourbon. We rode. Smitty and I rode. Well, Smitty and I went back in time on the whiskey train for a while. Yeah, we spent a long, and then tequila became our friend later in the evening, which was not advised.
Which was great because that's when I was there, and it got put in front of me, and I'm like, I'm driving home. Like, I'm not doing this. So
it was a nice offer, though.
Yeah, absolutely, it was from Scotty in the home league. It was great. Yeah, I mean, I introduced the league to what I did on the last podcast, which was the lunchbox. I showed everybody what I had, and it wasn't that overly priced. So at this bar, Canadian prices. So I'd love to hear what any Americans out there could tell me it would cost at a bar that they go to. So as I've said before, it's a shot of amaretto, a little bit of OJ, and then a light beer. So I think it was $6.90 something for the beer, $5 something for the amaretto, and I don't know if she charged me for the OJ because it was like, whatever, couple ounces for the American listeners out there, 3 ounces, let's say. It was delicious, and I did avoid the tequila. I did the pass it over to the guy that looked super drunk move, where you're like, have another, and just to avoid it. But yeah, so tonight I'm taking it easy. I'm having a Mill Street organic because I want, like my joke off the top, I want things tonight to be organic in nature and not forced. Like my predictions.
That was forced right there. How about a Woodford for me? Staying there. Let's get into it, Robbie. We got lots to cover today. We're gonna do like breaking out of camp. We got a lot of news in terms of who made teams, what that means. Are they gonna stick? What it means for the guys that dropped off. Obviously, you can find us on the Twitter machine at DingersPod, at Robbie Baseball 1, or myself at Attorney Boss. But let's get into it, Robbie. We got lots of guys. There's many guys in this group we're going to talk about here that are on your roster.
Yeah, in like all sorts of different things and exciting things, and then some very like minor housekeeping bits. First one up is Tim LaCostra is going to make the Mets opening day roster. Darren Ruff DFA'd. This isn't that big a deal, but Darren Ruff a couple years ago came back from KBO and had a nice little run. Good for him. But this one time, very happy about. This was immediate offseason guy that I was excited about. Outfielder with Houston, Corey Julks, has made the opening day roster. That's the exciting part. The crappy part, as we've said a million times, was how they managed their outfield last year, with Jose Siri. And I didn't like that. I hope that doesn't happen to Julks. They're different players, but again, not a great thing. Raimel Tapia, former...
real quick before you go past Julks, Robbie, do you have any concern that when Altuve comes back, Julks goes?
Yeah, I think that's why he made it. He's just an extra guy, and they're going to move bodies. We talked about on the last podcast, not knowing who was going to come in, like sub in for that. So I still want to see, like, depending on when you're listening to this, I will definitely be looking at Houston's opening weekend lineups to see how they fit and finish everybody in and around. Like that, to me, that's going to tell a bigger tale because Julks could be up there literally as the last guy. Like if they need someone to go play baseball, that might be the only time. JJ Machevitz had that last year, did not get up got called up early, did not get a lot of time. And it was like, well, this guy was like leading minor league baseball in home runs, and you don't put him in every day. Like, what are you expecting him to do? Everyday players need to maintain that. Anyway, Raimel Tapia, longtime Rocky, last year was with Toronto, got a minor league contract with Boston while he made the opening day roster. I can't imagine anybody's going to care about this. But hey, if you're in a league where you happen to own him, you do care. And if you're in those kind of leagues where you've got Tapia, you're listening to the right podcast. So
one thing I will say though, before I do, like, one thing I'll say with Tapia, has way stronger at bats than his stats show. He definitely challenges pitchers a little bit more. He impacts the game better from the offensive side than from the defensive side. So if you're a Boston fan, he's not the worst depth outfielder. If you're looking just purely from fantasy side, you're not going to like that. But as a fan, you might like him a little bit more. Pache in Oakland, Christian Pache over from Atlanta in the yes, it was the Olsen one, right?
It was the 2022 deal.
And we've seen like literally nothing good from Pache. I've had a couple maybe like days worth of good baseball. Spring was okay, right? It had a bit of a sour finish. I think this is one where they think they're going to be able to trade him here, because I think otherwise they would have just cut him. Like, I think they have something in the works. Could be a scenario. I'll use San Francisco because it's the easiest one, where Sergio Romo's on the roster for a day and then he's cut and then a trade happens, like something like that. They did that last year with the Gosuka guy we were talking about last week, right?
Yep,
like
that's true.
Those kind of things do happen, and just the way they handled this one, knowing he's out of options, seems like they have something in the works. So I would expect to see him on. Go ahead.
Oakland and San Francisco geographically close, but also a good fit for that exact purpose, because San Francisco's outfield's beat up. So they've kept a fourth outfielder that we'll mention later on, who just had a really fun spring. But Pache might be more of that like boring MLB option versus the potential exciting fantasy option that we would prefer. So yeah. The next one is a little one, Ty. I wanted to just say him because he's fun and exciting for me. Relief pitcher, because I was looking to find like somebody that could maybe do something fun and exciting. 29-year-old rookie Hobie Harris made Washington Nationals opening day roster. Had a very good spring. I don't know if it'll continue. I just imagine he's going to be like randomly getting low leverage mop up type duty early. But hey, cool. Congratulations, Hobie Harris.
I can't unhear Tommy Boy. Hobie Hancock. That's all I hear when I see that.
It's Herbie. It's Herbie.
I know, but that's all I hear. Oh, okay. Side note, just in terms of old movies, I saw maybe the greatest internet video today ever. Caddyshack, Rodney Dangerfield. Shout out to Jerry from Abandoned Dunes Caddy, right? The guy we've talked about a long time ago. But he was the one that shared it on Twitter, so I picked that one up if he's listening. And one of the video is basically Rodney Dangerfield from Caddyshack turning the speaker in his bag on, and then it cuts the music, and I don't know the name of the song off the top of my head, but then it basically takes him out of Dancing in the Fairway and cuts him into all the famous dance scenes in the history of like cinema. Oh, it's great. So I'll show it to you later. Anyone looking, is a Rodney Dangerfield video on his Twitter account. If you want to go look for it, I can't imagine Dangerfield's Twitter feed is just blowing up, but he might be able to find. Anyway, moving on. Matt Strom is going to be a starter briefly here to start the season in Philadelphia while they wait for Ranger Suarez to not go for Tommy John.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
I took him in our home league, Robbie, because there was no other good starting pitchers left, and B, he fell way too late with the potential for him to be back in a couple weeks. So I went and got him. And basically, it's between him and Bailey Falter, and frankly, he faltered in the playoffs last year, and I think that's the reason he didn't win the job. I think he could be a SP5 guy. I think he needs a little more seasoning. Like you can see there's moments of brilliance with Falter, but I just don't see it. But Strom still carries value in the bullpen. That's where we want to see him. JD Brubaker had a good string in terms of strikeouts. He just gives up too many big innings. Like that's really just his thing. There's enough here. He's going to hammer some strikeouts. but he's got the ominous elbow discomfort. So those with minor league options here in Pittsburgh are not rooting for, but could be seeing some upside to some of their guys that are currently sitting in AAA. Speaking of AAA, Grayson Rodriguez headed that way. This is clearly a contract play, Robbie. Like I saw way too many Baltimore fans like show the SP 1 through 5 and be like, how is this acceptable? I mean,
right.
if you
Dean
were
Kramer is
expecting
SP2. That's where it looks like he's going to slot in. Dean Kramer's getting your second day start. I mean, sure, you can do the same thing that's been done for years and years, right? Players got to work on defense. Maybe they want to see Grayson do something, for whatever 6 or 8 weeks. Like I'd said in our last episode, talking about the top 25 dynasty starting pitchers under 25. Rodriguez, I'm not as concerned with his April, but I want to see him come in and never lose his job. Like I want to see him get a legit shot. Just come in and, Josiah Gray to Washington type thing. You're just starting now. That's what you do here.
I think this has everything to do with controlling his innings. Keep in mind, he's coming off an injury-plagued season last year. I think this is everything: control of innings and contract management. And it's too easy a story for the front office to tell when it comes to contract manipulation. So I think they're just taking advantage of that in reality. But there's probably also a real health concern there. Chicago, Robbie, this is a you guy, so I'm going to let you cover this one. This is you written all over it.
Sure, yeah. Second baseman I really kind of liked under the radar all offseason with the White Sox, Romy Gonzalez, makes the opening day roster. He did have a good spring. I've got some notes on him a little later on that I'll discuss, but good to see that a couple guys that looked like they were, temporarily going to be on the major league roster, but likely to be bumped, did not end up getting bumped. Romy Gonzalez, another one of them. And that leads to, I'm going to call him your guy, but I think I have more shares in leagues that we are in together, and it's not many, but Oscar Colas.
I'm an Oscar Colas guy. You just keep taking him way too early. So, it's one of those things that I don't mind that in the dynasty formats. I was a little rattled by how early he went in the home league.
Well, I didn't even get to take him. I was looking to take him early, and I'm like, he's gone. All right, Zach Veen.
Yeah. Well, and he went in another league that I was in, drafted on Sunday as well. He went super early. And listen, I like him, but I think we make this mistake. We talk about it all the time, Robbie, because we play the dynasty style, redraft takes these reaches all the time. And they almost never pay off, right? Because you want the guys that come up in midseason and they're ready to go. These guys that start the season on the pro team, I mean, you can name them off the top of your head how many guys have been instantly successful. There's not a lot. And, usually they're pitchers, right? That's the other part of that. So, those are the things that, I think people make a lot of crucial mistakes with those sort of things. The concern for me with Romy Gonzalez, just backpedaling here while we're on the White Sox, there's just infield depth here in the organization, right? My question is how many at-bats? I think he deserved to make this team. No arguments on that. Lurie Garcia is still here as a guy that could immediately take those at-bats back. Yolbert Sanchez is right there as well as a guy that I think is going to create some scenarios. And then you've got guys like Lennon Sosa that are right there as well. So that's my big issue. A little further away, Wes Kath, but there's just some compression here, both in the infield and the outfield coming. And I think that's the only concern I have for Gonzalez. What's your take there? And do you feel that pressure on him or Colas for that matter? Because there are some outfielders too.
Yeah, I think for Colas, giving him the start is very much not high pressure situation. It's more like don't be outmatched. And if he's not outmatched, he should stick around and have a full season up. Romy Gonzalez, I think, is in a slow burn situation where he will not likely be asked to play every day, but when he is asked, he needs to be able to be, a 250 type hitter that puts the ball in play to move the runner over, because he'll be at the back of the lineup. I think it's a very important job that he's got to do with the White Sox because they're supposed to be a competitive, high octane team. But the more you break it down with them, the more you can see gaps in their potential to have inning-ending guys. And Romy Gonzalez might be on the other end of that. Do not strike out. Put the ball in play or walk, but do not strike out. Do not pop out. They could just be reasons why he's there. And he had a good spring. I think he had 5 dingers. So maybe they're like, oh, look at that. There's a little bit of pop in the bat too. But again, I don't think he's going to be an everyday start guy. But the other players you mentioned, Sosa in particular, came up last year after being really good in the minors, and he was not good when he came up. Whereas Romy Gonzalez might still have the ability to make a good first impression on the brass, not to mention the fact there is a new manager with the White Sox now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Jumping out back to Oakland, Urias Familia is not familiar with barely making the roster, but at the same time, he could be an interesting one there. We've talked about the uncertainty of the back end of that bullpen, and I think the days of Familia rolling out in the ninth are over, but certainly going to put some pressure on some of those other guys to step up and kind of hold on to those later innings, because they really still to this moment don't have a guy, right? Zach Jackson is the guy you and I both like to win the job over the season. I think everybody assumes it's going to be Trevor May, but I don't think Trevor May is the same guy that can close games either. And you can't just collect a bunch of former Mets cast off and decide that that's a good bullpen. So, right?
Well, I mean, they're trying.
Yeah,
they're trying to do it, but.
So I think that's going to be the way that one plays out. And again, very similar breath. A guy that you and I both just want to have some success is Jose Iglesias. This is a guy, he accepted the demotion to the AAA roster.
Right.
I think this is a spot here where he's also maybe like, listen, I'm not going to play this game anymore. Like, if I can't crack a roster, maybe I just go and be a coach at some point. Like, I don't know if he's at that point. He certainly deserves a roster spot, but empty average, defensive wizard. The game may come back to that at some point, but the game today seems to dismiss that skill set. I don't know. Do you think it's the end, Robbie?
I hope it's not the end. I'm just looking right now, Ty, to see where their AAA team is. So they're in Jacksonville. So he's not. Oh, sorry. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Jacksonville. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. It just looked like New Orleans. Anyway. So it's not too far for him, but maybe the idea is let him play in a warm location for a little bit. Maybe he's got an opt out. He'll try, one more. I don't know. It's just that he's been such a good player. And last year he hit very well in Colorado, but again, empty average guy. Not a lot of teams are looking for it, but Miami specifically is, and they just don't have room for him now. He could be first guy up, but again, it's going to have to be like somebody goes on the 60-day IL for him to come up. So I don't know, but I've got him in one dynasty league. I signed him to a 2-year deal last year, figuring like after a year in Colorado, he was going to get another deal somewhere. And then he didn't until very late in the offseason into spring training. And this is one of those results, right? Sometimes a guy tries to hold out for the 1 year, $7 million deal like Jerson Profar got. And other times you end up getting the come to spring training non-roster invite of Jose Iglesias. It's better sometimes to be in an organization in January than it is in March. Maybe this is what happened here. He's got to go back down to the minors, prove himself for 50, 60 at bats as like ready to rock and roll outside of Colorado, and Miami could bring him up. But again, like we're talking about absolute dart throw now to get anything fantasy wise out of Jose Iglesias in 2023 and really beyond. Like you said, this could be it for Jose Iglesias. I hope it isn't. Very well could be.
I just can't figure out how you're comfortable rolling Joey Wendell or Gene Segura or anybody not
Wendell
named Jordan
Groshans
out at shortstop.
crazy.
It's nuts, right? Like, I mean, I just don't see it. Like they have Birdie, who would be a really poor choice at shortstop as well. They don't have a real shortstop right now, which is why I'm kind of surprised by this move. But we'll see. I mean, maybe he's also going down to mentor Groshans, and maybe that's part of that strategy as well too. So who knows?
Yeah,
we'll see what happens there. Continue on the list. Obviously, Anthony Volpe making the Yankees roster, big news. He outplayed his competition, right? I think everybody knew Falafel wasn't going to be the starting shortstop there come season, and he certainly outperformed Peraza on the offensive side. Peraza obviously gets the tick slightly on the defensive side, but listen, it's New York and it's Yankee Stadium. Nobody cares about defense in there. They want to see bombs and doubles and offense all the time, and they want mediocre pitcher to keep in the game. That's Yankee baseball. It always has been. So I think that Peraza is expendable at this point. Like, is he a guy that now gets traded to potentially find some pitching depth for that decimated rotation? Like, that's the interesting piece of that development for me.
Oh man, I really hope you're wrong on that. What I wanted to check here was Oswaldo Cabrera who was one of the other three of that like rookie trio who ended up going to the outfield. And last year he came up and had 154 bats, something like that. I'm just trying to see, did he make the opening day roster? They've got enough injuries that he should have if he didn't.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. I know that they might not have announced that one yet, to be 100% honest with you.
Yeah, we do still have time left for that. But anyway, Atlanta made an interesting move. So they've got two starters who before camp nobody would have thought would be heading in as opening day guys, Jared Schuster and I think it's Dylan Dodd, because Kyle Wright's now going to go to the IL. And this is going to be interesting. Both guys had good springs. Atlanta, as we talked about, I think last episode, or maybe it was whatever, recently, go back and listen. We were discussing the fact that there's a lot of kind of SP 4 through 6s with the Braves right now. And here are a couple of them who are going to get to start. I think Dodd will be the first guy to lose his job when someone is healthy or they deem there to be like a chink in the armor. But I mean, whatever. It's just kind of interesting that a team that is supposed to be in it in the NL Central and in it for, World Series berth is only going to start with 60% of their planned rotation. It's not a Met situation of terror here, but it's not ideal for Atlanta to be in a similar situation this early.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Jordan Walker obviously making the St. Louis rosters was, I think, expected by most. I think it just shuffles that outfield. Tyler O'Neill playing center field to start the season. Definitely trying to find a way to get Jordan Walker in that lineup and make them better. It'll be interesting to see in season how he holds up in left field, because obviously he's not stealing time away from the Platinum Glover at third. So, guess what, kid? You're an outfielder now, because you ain't going anywhere.
Welcome to left field, and if you're good, we'll put you to right.
Exactly. Well, and even the possibility of like saying Goldschmidt maybe as he gets older starts to DH a little bit more, right? Even that's unlikely with Yepez there. So, you are a left fielder, Jordan Walker. Figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the good news and notes, the hot news from the week in baseball. But now, Ty, we can dive into, because we're pretty much at the end of spring training. By the time this comes out, it will be the end of spring training. Season could have already started, opening night, opening weekend, depending on when you listen. Here are some of the things that Ty likes to talk about. These are spring training stats that we care about. And Ty, I'll say my first point, and then we'll just chip away at it after that, if you're cool with it. This is pitching based. So there are several pitchers of note who had things that happened that were good in spring training. Shane Bieber, good spring. Seth Lugo with San Diego, good spring. Ross Stripling led MLB. Those three guys led MLB with 23 and a third or 23 innings. Bieber was just great all around. Lugo, great all around. Stripling, brutal in those 23 and a third innings. 7.43 ERA, 4 home runs given up, and a 1.78 whip. Now, we've got mixed emotions on Stripling. He came to Toronto for a little bit. Previously was one of those guys with the Dodgers that just never got, into the legit starting rotation. He was always a cusp, a fill-in, a this or that. Looked like he's actually going to do it in San Francisco, and then doesn't have a good, comfortable spring. Hopefully he's shaking it off. Hopefully he was working on something early on when he gave up those dingers. But with Bieber, I am loving it. And we talked before about, I thought maybe some starting pitchers could have got up to 30 innings. We don't have World Baseball Classic numbers added into this, but I still feel like 23.1 seemed a little light for total spring training innings. However, Shane Bieber is like a legit guy. Seth Lugo was fighting hard for a job, and Ross Stripling was just new to the team. So all kind of different scenarios under that. But anyway, so there's 3 dudes to know. Ty, if you want to go through some of the high K totals that we have.
Really quick on Stripling. I have I commented on a couple people that were hyping Stripling through the offseason, and something that I just commented on. Like, my big concern is he gets hit really hard, right? Like, he goes in these little stretches where he has weak contact and a couple strikeouts here and there, but there's outings where he just gets ripped all over the diamond. That's my big concern, is he's going back to a division that is familiar with him, and I just don't know that it's going to go well for him, because it didn't the first time. So it'll be interesting to see, but I certainly don't have any shares of Stripling. I'm not betting on what we saw last year. I'm fading for sure. So I'm not really shocked by this at the beginning. It is spring, so you got to put it out of mind. But I would, if I'm betting on strip success over the year, I'm out. Similar to JD Brubaker's current status. So he had 26 strikeouts in 17 innings. I talked about that earlier. The whip 110, great numbers. Problem with JD Brubaker, ERA was 5.19. Now it's going to be a little inflated with, essentially 2 full games, right? 17 innings. But at the same time, still a concern, right? Because, most spring games, you're only facing 40, 50, 70 at the top, usually, of the Major League roster on the other side. So I know he played against Toronto a bunch, did okay. But that loop is Philly and Pittsburgh and Detroit. So, you have a couple offenses there that can do a little bit of damage and kind of go from there. But then Robbie Ray, Robbie, we talked about pre-show, is a guy that we're both invested in a little bit. As much as it hurts me, the value of the strikeout, played in a couple leagues. So I like that. Garrett Cole had 27 in 21 innings, but the 3.32 RA, like that's kind of right where we expect Garrett Cole these days, right? Like just over 3 ERA, massive strikeout numbers, wins, a reasonable whip. That's just who he is, right?
That's the top dog.
Most people are good with that. Robbie Ray is hopefully going to be in that same category for owners that have him out there. And I think maybe the one guy that has just exploded onto boards, Robbie, this spring is Graham Ashcraft in Cincinnati. I don't know if you remember this. Cincinnati was in Toronto last summer, and I said Graham Ashcraft has something special here. Like it didn't. If you remember, I said his fastball looks like it floats, and then it pumps the gun at 100. It doesn't even make sense. I don't know if you go back to whatever episode that was and give it a listen, you'll hear my confusion because like what I can't figure out is how anybody hits it because it looks like it's floating like a knuckleball, yet it's got velocity like it's the tightest spinner in the league. So a really interesting guy to watch because I'll tell you right now, if he adds 2+ pitches, if he gets 2+ pitches with that fastball, I mean, there's Cy Young upside in that arm. I don't think he's going to find that, but we'll see, right? I think a real bargain though for most people looking for one late in drafts because the strikeout numbers
start, right? Ty, like hell of a start in spring training, 25 K, 17 and third innings, 2.60 ERA, decimal 8.7 whip. All he did was sell more people on him in the spring.
And Frank, who's in our surf league with us, Robbie, had a great point on Twitter yesterday or today. Just basically said, you want a guy to bet on early in the season, bet over Graham Ashcroft strikeouts, right? Like because like it's going to be way discounted by the boards, right? So go after that one. We talked about Bieber already, 25 Ks in his 23 innings. The one thing I have, Robbie, like that's my concern with Bieber is the K per 9's been dropping slowly, right? Still a good pitcher, still sharp, still gets people out, but that's the one thing. If he doesn't get the wins this year, for whatever reason, he's just not the top dog, right? That's all. Just something to flag, not a concern or anything, just something to watch. Chandler Houck with starter innings, basically, which is an interesting thing for Boston as they kind of used him as the closer. But he got torched, right? 9.75 back to the bullpen for you. Because I don't think the 2-pitch pitcher that he is plays. We've talked about that many times this offseason. The hook is still absolutely Houck's hook, absolutely a real thing. And
but look
the
at
rest of it is just a problem.
The 12 walks and 9 dingers given up, like just disgusting. Cause you're like, oh wow, look at the Ks, right? And then you ignore the other stats, like I was jokingly doing with Brent Honeywell. But Houck is, I think, going to be in the starting rotation for the Red Sox. And like, I would bet whoever he's pitching against, I would bet on that team to win that game because it should be high scoring. And in a high scoring affair, I don't know what kind of inning ending guys the Red Sox have right now, but I know they've got a lot of guys who are just like base contact guys, the Arroyos of the world. So I don't know what's going to happen with it, but Houck being in that starting rotation is a bad sign for the Red Sox, especially if he kicks around a few times, because they do have some starting pitcher injuries as per usual.
Yep.
Oh, next guy's
Brad
my guy.
Keller. Yeah, go ahead.
20 I have to do it. 25 Ks, 20 innings pitched. 4.95 ERA is par for the Keller course, and a 1.4 whip, par for the Keller course. What you want to take out of this is the fact that he didn't get worse. He came in, he had a bad 2022, and for some reason, people are like, "Oh, contract year, pending free agent. He's gonna break out." No, he's not. This is Brad Keller. He's still money in the bank from a Rule 5 draft in like 2018, 2019. Like, he has found profit for the Royals that he's been able to pitch for them for years and years. And again, this year, he's like their SP5. Like, Daniel Lynch got hurt. That doesn't even move Keller up into SP4. They're just going to give it to Bubik. Like crazy, risky. Chris Bubik gets time. Brad Keller just like was fine this spring. Not outstanding by any stretch, but like nice to see Keller not have 10 Ks and 20 innings pitched. Maybe he can throw a few more or get a few more, punch some more tickets. That's what I was trying to say, Ty. Maybe he can punch some more tickets this year than in previous years.
Yeah, I mean, he's 30, right? Or give or take 30, 31, something like that. Like there's no improvement from Brad Keller. Yeah, he's up there.
I'm going to look.
Might be 29. Yeah, it might be 29, but he's up there. A guy that makes you feel older than 30. Yusei Kikuchi has had an absolutely lights out spring. ERA of 1, 18 innings, 25 strikeouts. The big number you're not going to see here with the 1.06 whip is the number of swinging strikes that he's induced. I think he lapped the field in terms of swinging strikes this spring. That's a huge thing to note. And I think everyone is still going to remain focused on the 10 walks, which is still concerning. Don't get me wrong. But when you give up no hits and your whip is entirely made up of walks, it's not a huge deal, right? So whether you give up hits or walks, it doesn't matter. Like it's the opposite of Moneyball. If they don't get on base or you limit the number of guys that get on base, it's still going to matter less when you get them struck out after that. So Yusei Kikuchi has looked about as good as I've seen him ever in Major League Baseball, and I would not be surprised if he surprises a lot of people because all of the pundits are saying slow your roll on him. I'm not sure they're right on that one. I do think he could blow through a lot of expectations.
It'd be interesting if once he got to ball 3, if like the order just came to put it in the zone, right? Like just make it as simple as here's what we want your first 3 starts. You get to ball 3, you don't lose the hitter. Throw it in the zone, force him to put the ball in play on you. Don't give him a free pass and see what that changes because that could be kind of interesting.
So one of the things, and this is the stuff that matters in spring that you don't get until later in the year, is the thing they've talked about in the spring is that the pitch count has actually helped him because he's not thinking. He just gets on the mound and throws. And that was a big thing that he got into last year was just overthinking. Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah.
I'm sorry. That's 10 walks. Anyway, Brad Keller, Ty, is 27. He's also 6'5", which I didn't realize. 6'5", 255. He's got the body of a starting pitcher. Max Scherzer also has the body, or a bouncer, has the body of an Adonis, and he plays like one. 25 strikeouts, 17 innings pitched, 1.53 ERA, 1.02 whip. We don't care about Max Scherzer's spring. Here's what we really care about with Max Scherzer. Healthy. Yep. Yes. Let's freaking go, baby. We need 30 starts from Scherzer this year. Daddy needs you, Max. Daddy needs you. All right, Ty. The next one's yours. Not a lot of total, but I mean, it's beautiful to look at.
Yeah, Jeffrey Springs. I've bought him in a couple leagues. Is a guy that just has looked like an elite SP3 and is going to be treated like an SP2 in most formats. I think. I think the big win here is the 24 strikeouts in 14 innings, Robbie. Like that's what we want to see because I think that's the concern everybody had with him coming out of last year was like he gets a lot of people out, but not necessarily by strikeouts. So I will say this, like I liked him regardless of what he did in the spring based on what I saw last year. I didn't get a chance to watch, but if he's getting 24 strikeouts, he must have sharpened the third pitch, right? That's just the reality. So that's exciting. The 0.5 whip, speaks to his accuracy, which was what I took away from last year. It sets up the changeup. He might be one of the better tunnelers out there. So this is a guy that I think really could be a bust, like a breakout guy and bust through a lot of expectations.
Yeah. Shintaro Fujinami, who signed a 1 year, $7 million, I believe that's correct, 1 year, $7 million deal with Oakland, had a solid line outside of just this one thing, Ty, which I know you'll forgive. And that's 17 walks in 18 and 2/3 innings. I
Yeah.
mean, now this goes back to my point of if Kikuchi, when he gets to ball 3, is told throw strikes, don't give away the walk. If the same mentality is given to Fujinami, I could honestly see him becoming a pretty solid pitcher. But I'm not in, like, Dipoto doesn't return my calls, so I don't even know who I'd have to talk to in Oakland. I don't have a contact number for there. But that would be my advice, would be tell him not to lose batters like he did in the spring. The other interesting thing is it's been announced that he's only going to start once a week, and it's just going to be on Saturday. He's just going to start Saturdays. So if that's the case, for a 1-year contract, I find it very odd. I mean, push the guy, right? He's not a kid. He's 27 years old. But maybe they're going to do that for the first, 6-8 starts. And then they'll realize, okay, he is going to be part of our rotation, part of our future, or no, he is not. And we'll just, put him in every 5th day, something like that. I can't assume this is how Oakland would roll, to say you're going to be Saturday, because that means they're going to push somebody back 1 week. They're going to move somebody up the next, and it's going to start to screw with the peripheral guys around. And I can't imagine, with the newer rules about calling guys up and setting them down, that it's going to be like, well, we'll just send JP Sears down this time so he gets regular rest, and then we'll call up Kyle Muller so that he can pitch on his own regular rest, and then screw it all up again in 4 days, to avoid this, to make sure, Fujinami's on the Saturday start, unless he is just dealing, right? At that point in time, you make the adjustment, but he certainly didn't earn it this spring.
Do you know it'd be a really interesting model that's just like light bulb went off for me? Is if this is a potential trend that we see, to add an extra rest day to the starting rotation, but what you do is you pitch these guys out of the pen on their bullpen days intentionally. Like,
I'd love that.
Right? Like I'm not. It just doesn't make sense for all the reasons you just stated.
Yeah.
But that, like, the light bulb for me was like, I think they're going to do this. Like, it makes a lot of sense, because I think the big thing, and I said this when he signed, Robbie, the hook for me is the big concern. So what do you want to do with a guy like that? You want him to work on it. So what do you need? Side sessions. Where can you do that? Out of the bullpen. You get real major league at bats with a side session mentality to go and work on it. Oakland doesn't care how many games they win this year. They want Dylan Cruz, and they want to be done with it. Like, that's what they're playing for. And this is an interesting move. I like the upside here. He could be the closer on those days for the way that bullpen's built.
Well, my honest opinion is, if he doesn't do what they need, right? Like, if he's not going to be one of their starters, why wouldn't you just move him to the bullpen? Because you're not going to deal him. No one's going to give you anything back for him if he's not doing it. Excuse me, like 5.5 ERA, 1.8 WHIP isn't going to get it done. But if he has numbers closer to he did in the spring and controls the walks, like, who does Oakland need to impress? Like you said, all they need to do is be happy with it. But it's only a 1-year deal. So, I mean, push the guy. And if you've agreed to not start that way, that doesn't mean you can't change your mind in season.
Well, fastball splitter plays at the major league level. It's the other pitches that aren't major league ready. So if they can figure those ones out, this kid could be a big deal. Speaking of guys that made a big deal this spring, Jared Schuster, you talked about that off the hop a little bit. He made the Atlanta roster. I think he might have made the 5th spot regardless of the injuries that they faced. Dodd was the one that kind of limped in, but I think Schuster, 0.5 ERA. This is a first-round guy out of Wake, right? This is a Wake Forest guy.
Not sure where he was. I know he was a college guy.
Yeah, so 18 and 2 innings, 0.59 WHIP, 18 strikeouts. Good for you, kid. Go get him. Don't get hurt, and go rip it. So speaking of guys that may or may not get hurt in this list, we've got a bunch of them. Josiah Gray is the guy we both like, Robbie. Added a cutter. So I did my digging. And I mentioned it a couple weeks ago that you've been all over him, and I did my digging after that. The cutter is a big deal, and we saw it in the spring. He got to 6 innings in his last outing, Robbie. That's a big deal for Josiah Gray, because the stuff to get people out is there. It's whether or not he can make it past 5 innings that's really haunted him, and I think this is a promising sign here. Jameson Taillon in Chicago had a mediocre spring. But he's going to get all the opportunity to win games in Chicago. I think if I was to pick one NL team that could make the playoffs and no one is predicting it, for me, it's Chicago. Stroman looks really good in the spring. They added a couple older veteran guys across that whole roster that could have a major impact. Steven Matz is a guy that left Toronto, signed the big deal here in St. Louis. He's a guy that I think people forgot about that could have a sneaky good season and cost you nothing. Jake Woodford is a placeholder until they decide which one of their minor leaguers they want to bring up.
Oh, it's Wainwright. It's Wainwright missing time that got Woodford in. Ty. Sorry, I didn't write that note.
Yeah. Sorry, let me.
But it's interesting that they gave it to Woodford. I think that's like kind of fun.
I think they're saving the minor league guy. But I think they're saving the minor league spot for when Flaherty goes down.
So is that a Houston Astros jersey you're wearing?
Yes, it is, buddy.
Oh my God, go to hell. Jeez.
It's Nolan Ryan, man. Relax.
I don't care who's on the back.
Oh,
it's on the front. Dude. Where's your trash can?
It's right beside me. I almost opened the show with the trash can.
But instead I did a trash can.
I am not from the school of thought that the Astros are scum. I will draft all of them on my roster all day, every day, because they just keep winning. And
as a Mariners fan, I don't agree with you. Anyway,
that's fine. That's fine.
Other guys that had decent springs, solid lines.
Yep.
Dylan Dodd, solid. Dustin May, solid. Verlander, solid. I just wanted to note those guys that they were good. Some guys that sucked: Jack Flaherty, Trevor Williams, Zach Plesac, Chad Kuhl, who's with Washington, SP5 in Washington's going to be rough in Washington on the non-Josiah Gray and Mackenzie Gore days. And the Gore days could be rough, but at least you want to watch them and then see, is it really rough? And then Jose Urena with Colorado all had very bad springs. Not ideal. But again, like Jack Flaherty is somebody that a lot of people are really trying to push. Trevor Williams, again, that's another Washington guy. Like Corbin, no, sorry, not Corbin Kell. Corbin, what is it? Patrick Corbin. Holy crap, that was hard.
There you go.
Oh, words is tough. Patrick Corbin, Trevor Williams, and Chad Kuhl as part of that Washington rotation. You're talking about the fight for Dylan Cruz. I think that's your first place runner right there with that rotation. Woof, buff, woof. Anyway,
yeah,
that's it. Those guys.
I'm not sure Washington's going to be as bad as people think. I think they've got enough upside on their roster to win some games. I think they're going to be better than Oakland for sure. That's kind of my take. But I will say this: like, if you look at Oakland's roster, there's some pieces there. Like, there's not nothing. I think it's a really interesting lineup to watch for this year. You look at the spring on the offensive side. We saw Corbin Carroll. I think everybody's assuming he's going to be great. I'm not there yet, Robbie. I still think there's a good baseball player here. I don't think he's the superstar that everybody thinks he's going to be. He reminds me a little bit of like Adam Eaton, as a kind of grinder.
Like injured or pre-injured?
Well, we'll see. I mean, he
pre-injured's
plays
good.
I agree. But Adam Eaton was never a superstar. He was always just a good player. And I think people have talked themselves into Corbin Carroll being a superstar. And that's kind of where I draw the line. Blake Sabol, catcher in San Francisco, big red flag on Sabol is he cannot throw anybody out at all. It's bad. It's terrible. So that's one of the big things that's going to haunt him in terms of playing time. So we'll see. We've talked about that a bunch. If you don't play defense, you don't get to play. Sabol's in risk of that one. Robbie Grossman as a guy that, interestingly was given the job in Texas, Robbie.
Yeah,
you're a Grossman guy.
No. I was big on Grossman last year and he really disappointed me. But the fact that he's had 11 walks, that was his thing in 2021, Ty, he was an equal K to walk guy. And then he lost it last year and just sucked. And 11 walks this spring tells me he's seeing the ball again. So I mean, total sleeper because everybody hates him right now after last year. Absolute sleeper in Texas. Robbie Grossman could be a pretty productive player.
Yep. No, I mean that was why I was going to cue you up before you got upset. To make that kind
of emotions got the better of me. I apologize.
So Derek Hall in Philadelphia is a guy that I think a lot of people are buying right now, Robbie, and it's an interesting one for me because if you look at that lineup construction, like once Bryce Harper's back, there's not a bats for Hall. I mean, Hoskins certainly helps. Right. But I still don't know how many at-bats are there for Derek Hall. And if that team's truly going to make a run, They're probably still going to have to add a couple pieces. I just, that's my big concern with Hall is like, is he going to be the guy that actually gets the at-bats? He's going to start that way. I'm concerned he's not going to end that way, but certainly looks good in the spring as a guy that could potentially add some value. Matt Olson had a absolutely rocking spring. And, I think big things for Atlanta offensively, especially if you got a healthy Acuna, you got Olson doing this, and you got even 95% of LBs, you are laughing. Mike Brasso absolutely crushes lefties. He did that all spring. He's going to just continue to hit lefties and sit on the bench against righties. That's just his thing. So don't be surprised. We talked about Romy Gonzalez already in Chicago, who cracked the roster. 6 bombs, though, Robbie. That's outside the norm for him. I think if we got 15 to 20, I think that would be like
That'd
a
be
shock.
Impressive to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to get enough at bats to get that. That's my take. But like if you got 15 to 20, that's an absolute steal where you're going to be buying him in any draft. Massey is a guy in Kansas City that, Robbie, I'm going to throw to you because I know very little about, have paid very little attention to Massey. And I'm just going to defer on that one.
Yeah, just a good spring for a guy that everybody was like, yeah, he should be the second baseman. And he was like decent when he came out last year. And then as the season wore on, he just got, stat line, everything went down a little bit. We've talked about it countless times. It's fatigue. It's players who have life-changing things go on. And as the year goes on for them, those initial like exciting things, adrenaline running through you, you're an MLBer, right? You were just rocking in AAA. Now you're an MLBer. They can wear you down a bit, and he wore down last year, but this spring he's back to the form that we want to see as fantasy GMs. 279 average, 1,007 OPS, and 5 home runs. Kansas City is not necessarily a good team, not necessarily a bad team, certainly not expected over the course of the year to be highly competitive. But if you got a guy like Massey who's able to bump up his stat line from last year, that can make a team that might be considered 500 at best to end up becoming a 500 team that could that could actually be helping out a lot of other guys if he's making good contact. So it's a good thing to see Massey have a solid spring and get his job second base.
Do you think he can play third? Right? Like, do we think it's a foregone conclusion that he holds off Nicky Lopez?
Not a foregone conclusion. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work for Nicky Lopez. I know no one likes Nicky Lopez right now because he very much like Grossman had the great 2021 as far as like kind of like a pseudo breakout for him, but then regressed so badly last year that people are just not interested. I've never been a big Lopez guy, but I did acquire him in one league with contracts. Simply because the guy that had him didn't want the $8 million hit. So I was like, he's got 3 position eligibility. It's a 30-team league. I'll take him. And then if somebody disappoints or gets hurt, Lopez just becomes a starter. And that's exactly what he's doing for me, sitting on my bench until that time comes. But a Massey spring, a strong one like this, does set a guy like Lopez back a little bit right now.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to Oakland, we've spent way too much time on Oakland tonight, but Esturio Ruiz and Kevin Smith both had reasonable springs, 17 and 15 RBIs. I commented on a couple feeds again this week, just saying like, listen, Oakland's going to outperform almost everybody's expectations. Right? Everybody's just assuming they're going to be the worst, but there's going to be some stats here. The problem in Oakland is the pitching, and that's where they're really going to get banged up. There's some deals on offense, Robbie. I know Kevin Smith is a guy that we've both talked about as a guy that could be good. He just continues to not be. And so this spring is the first sign of that we've seen at the pro level. So we'll see if he can continue that or gets the opportunities. I don't believe he's going to break camp with Oakland. I think we're going to see him, at some point in the season, probably for a long haul. And this is the first time we're going to go to Seattle, Robbie. So I'm going to kick it to you here for your first Seattle mention.
Yeah, just to confirm, Kevin Smith is going to AAA. It was announced this morning that he's not going to make the opening day roster. But I don't see that as the worst thing for him because last year he came up and everybody was pretty hyped up for him to just be the third baseman. I was pumping the brakes on him last year saying, whoa, there's another guy in Oakland, Jermis Garcia. And Garcia seems to be lost in the fold in Oakland. Kevin Smith, I don't think is in that same position. I think he's going down to AAA to start and then to come up if and when a spot is available. Now off to Marinerville with Jerry. Amazing offseason acquisition, Cooper Hummel, who he stole for the low price of 2020 Rookie of the Year, Kyle Lewis, who couldn't stay healthy, but actually was this spring. Hummel had 15 freaking runs in spring training tie. They were putting him out, and he was just scoring and scoring and scoring. This is a depth piece for Seattle. This is a potential third catcher, a potential, outfielder on certain days. Hummel is going to get a great experience with Seattle. I believe it's probably going to be a full season at the MLB level. Between him and Dylan Moore, Seattle can cover every single position. I don't know which one of those two is going to pitch, but the other, like Hummel, will probably catch when Dylan Moore is pitching. But those two guys are just going to be the sandlot players for the Mariners this year. And Hummel might, get himself on a run where we're starting to see 15 at bats a week. And at that point in time, in some of your deeper leagues, you might want to take a look again. Like, he's a good hitter. He's a good contact hitter. Issue last year with Arizona was he was just so poor average wise that it didn't matter when he had a 2-walk game. And then all of a sudden he sat for 3 games. Like, he just couldn't get it going with the Diamondbacks.
A catcher's never going to pitch because they got that pie throwing mentality with that short arm delivery. So,
well, he just got down on his knees, right? Get down on his knees and just throw it in.
Benito Santiago style. I like it. Bryce Johnson here, San Francisco, 13 runs, 12 stolen bases. Whoa. Made the team. You talked about the banged up outfield here. Like, there's a real opportunity for some innings. How long that's going to last, we'll see. But speed plays, especially with triples alley. Like, if you can play a little bit of defense and go get them, as they say, there's going to be a spot for you if you can get on base and steal bases. I think it's going to be an interesting season on the stolen base front. We really just don't know how significant that's going to be yet. We are seeing some spikes in stolen bases in the spring, but we always see certain guys try it. Whether it carries over, that's going to be the big question, Robbie.
Have you seen the Vogelbach Mets MLB commercial for stolen bases? Oh my God, I saw it today and I burst out laughing. So the commercial is Dan Vogelbach is on first base and he looks over at second, then it's the voiceover. And he's like, with these new bigger bases, I'm going to steal second base. And then they go to Buck Showalter, and Showalter's voiceover is he thinking of stealing second base? And then they just have the conversation where they're looking at each other. And I'm like, that is such a great thing. Like, that is so un-MLB like. I loved it. Oh my God, I loved it. It was so fun.
My brother flagged those commercials. Not that one. I didn't know about that one. But
Yep.
he talked about how good a job MLB did with the rollout of the rules, talking about the improvements and that sort of thing. And just that they were actually legitimately funny. And
I would go find that commercial. It is going to make you laugh. And I didn't continue to say about it. Like, I didn't walk you through the whole thing, but oh man, just the premise is great, right? Like, Dan Vogelbach, I'm gonna steal a base. Like,
I like it. So Jose Siri, we mentioned earlier, Robbie, just while we're talking stolen bases, is a guy to watch on that front. Like, you're talking about a guy that I'm not gonna say a guarantee or for sure thing, because we still don't know if Siri can stick in full-time role. But I think there's a scenario there that's real, where he could lead the American League in stolen bases. Like, as crazy as that sounds. Like, if you want a dark horse
predictions, what are you doing?
I'm just saying, if there's a dark horse, that's one of them. I think that's interesting. Connor Capel, 13 stolen bases.
13
Jose
walks, Ty. He led minor league, he led spring training in walks. Yeah, I just wanted to note that. That's all.
Yep, and Jose Brillo in Cincinnati is the guy that if they're going to give him the job, I mean, 311 average,
not over yet.
OPS, 10 RBIs, a couple triples. Like, this is the guy, Robbie, you flagged 3 years ago as the guy to watch in Cincinnati. It obviously changed when all of your Seattle Mariners got traded over there. But, definitely a little bit more depth there than there was when you made that statement. But a guy that's right there on the cusp, has the potential to be a major leaguer. Worst case, they let him play outfield. They'll let anyone play outfield in Cincinnati. So that's definitely on the docket as well, too. So that wraps up spring training numbers. And Robbie, we're going to bring this episode home just by going through our predictions for the year. We're going to go through statistical leaders and then some of the awards as well. So Robbie, we'll kick it off here with AL runs, AL run leaders, and you went with a guy that's probably only going to play half the season, which is interesting.
Oh my
Let me know what your thoughts are here.
Oh, I want to put a quick little bow in the Jose Barrio discussion. I just quickly looked to see if there were like a confirmation on him for opening day or not. But I actually found a note from the 19th of March that said he's getting time in center field, which is Will Benson's position. But more importantly, the fact that the Reds might actually be looking to find a way to get him in the lineup is like a first ever. So that's a great sign. I'll leave it at that. Defending AL MVP Aaron Judge is my pick for runs. He also led the league last year in runs with like 133. I mean, when you're hitting 62 bombs, that's 62 runs automatically. So I think Judge is still in the 50 run category. I think the Yankees are still going to be pretty solid with the OBP. Some of those young guns might be on base for him. And I see more runs coming for him. So that's all it is. It's just like a track record. All he needs is exactly what you said he's not going to have, and that's health.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing. Like, and if you look historically at guys that, put that much contact into play, even without being the massive human being that Aaron Judge is, there's just way too many things. First year on a big contract, like these things just find a way to kind of be a perfect storm in a lot of these scenarios. I'm going to bet on that. I don't disagree. If he's healthy, he probably leads this category. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm playing the fact that he probably doesn't. I'm going to go in division, and I'm going to pick Bo Bichette to be the runs leader. I just don't think people realize how many hits he gets and how many times he's on base, and just how bad the middle of that lineup was behind him last year, and they still got near the top of the group. So I think with an improvement and a bounce back from the couple characters behind him, I think Bo Bichette is in that category, at least in contention. And I think with a couple things falling the right way could lead that. And that's going to piss a whole bunch of people off because they're like, he can't play defense. Who cares? He scores runs. That's what we're talking about. Even though I'll say this, Robbie, and I'm not going to mention him when we get down to it. But potential, actually, we don't have this on here. I take that back. Potential guy that could be a sneaky candidate for a Gold Glove, and I think that will shock people to hear that, but I'm just saying the progression's there. It's just throwing errors. That's an easy thing to fix. So
it's just throwing it. I mean, his poor play at shortstop helped to make Vladdy a Gold Glover. So
correct.
For NL, Ty, who do you have for the run leader?
Yeah, I went with Trey Turner, safe bet. I just think putting him in the front of the Philly offense, I like it. I think he's going to hit a couple more home runs this year in Philly. I think he's going to see some better pitches. Even though that LA lineup was great, I think he's going to have a little bit better scenario to hit in Philly for him this year. So I like that one.
Okay, I've got Corbin Carroll with Arizona. That's a bit of the shock one, but the reason being is that he's going to be there from the onset. He's got a good average, so he's going to be on base. And they do have some bigger bats in the lineup. And as long as he's running quickly, getting, that OPS up, hitting doubles and triples, he'll be scoring. It's a surprise pick, but that's just the way I wanted to go, Ty.
Yeah.
Continue your homer out with the AL home run leader. Why don't you?
Yeah, I'm just betting bounce back on Vladdy. Like if it's not Judge, it's Vladdy. Like I just think that's the reality. The only other person really for me that's even in this conversation is Jordan Alvarez in Houston. Right? Like there's a real dark horse in Eloy Jimenez, but like for me it's a 3-horse race. If all are healthy, it's going to come down to one of those three.
And I mean, I'm going back runs and home runs. Judge, like, I don't know why we're even talking about Vlad, who was like half the homer total of Judge on what was considered a down year. But I mean, I can't bet against the guy. I've loved him since he was a prospect that nobody else liked. When everybody was like, oh, he's got issues. You were talking about gap in the swing and whatever. I've had him. I love him. The decision that I will never regret is trading him along with several other keepers to Smitty in the home league, who was able to use those keepers to win a championship the same year I missed the playoffs. And I got Soto back and I gave up Judge, Vlad, and others, but whatever. I still think Judge is the man when healthy. So anyway, for the NL tie, I went with a bit of a surprise, basically because you took my boy. So I'm like, you know what? If there's a guy who could break out and do it on the offensive side, that would be exciting and impressive. It's going to be Austin Riley with the Braves because the lineup is loaded, which leads into the next category. But he is a power bat. He went from a top 100 prospect who disappointed to a legit MLBer. You talked about it the World Series year with Atlanta, how he was hitting the ball so damn hard, and it was just great defense catching it. Well, all of a sudden the ball goes a little higher, out of the park. I think Riley's got a shot, and I think he's going to be the NL home run leader.
Whew. I mean, I don't hate it because it's definitely possible, and I definitely picked Alonso just to make you pick somebody else. But a guy here for me that is a dark horse because he's going to play less games. Tatis is a guy that if we're not into the 50s, right, if we don't see 51 plus home runs, like I still think Tatis can get to 40 in less games. We'll see. So just as a guy that's a dark horse, there's only a handful of guys in the NL that can get to 40, right? So, I think that's an interesting note. AL RBIs, I went with Vladdy to go in line with the home runs. I think it's interesting that you went to a different guy after picking the runs and home runs leader and then decided not to make him the RBIs leader. I found that an interesting equation, Robbie. Please expand.
Absolutely. I think Josh Bell is going to lead the AL in RBIs, and it is a story that will play out throughout my rankings as far as what I feel like teams can do. And Bell is going to be surrounded by high contact hitters who are going to be on base in front of him in Stephen Kwan, Ahmed Rosario. He's got that Ramirez guy. There's just going to be talent on base for him to drive in, and I can see him doing that, not having to hit everything as a home run, but being able to just drive runs in. Whereas with Judge, it's like power, power, power. But the Yankees have been more OBP than they have contact, and I think Cleveland's more contact, which might create the opportunity for Bell to drive runs in. I think it's going to be a bit of a perfect storm for him to do it.
Yeah, so my issue with Bell is that if we were giving first half season awards, Bell's got on this list. But Bell generally does not show up for the second half of the season. That is the big issue with Josh Bell. So I like Josh Bell. That's not to slight on him. But NL RBIs, you went with Riley, who's your home run leader, which does align with your the math there. I went very, very similar reason to what you just went on Bell in the NL, but it's also because, for Alonso, I don't think he's in the same scenario as some of the other guys that we've mentioned so far in New York, where he's going to have a pile of RBIs in front of him, just based on we don't know if Lindor can continue the bounce back, right? Like we assume that, right? We assume there's going to be some guys on, but I don't like to bet on that. But what we can guarantee is Manny Machado is going to hit some baseballs, right? That's just what he does. And if you wedge him between all of that talent that they have at the top of that lineup, I just don't see a scenario where he's not having his best season this year. Like if he's healthy, he has a career year, in my opinion.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now let's get into the category that is your favorite, and I don't care at all about stolen bases. Just kidding, everybody. I live and die by the bag swiped. So I'm picking, no surprise to anybody who's been listening for the whole offseason, Bubba Thompson with Texas. I think the Leody Taveras injury is just good fortune for that to be locked and loaded because he stole 60-plus bases between MLB and AAA last year. I don't see a reason why Texas wouldn't want to continue to push him to do that. We talked about scenarios where he comes into games late. I just think this is almost like a foregone conclusion. If he plays all year in MLB, he's going to swipe 50 bags, and I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's an interesting one there for sure. I think there's a high possibility that he's the AL leader. In the NL side, I went with Acuna. One guy that I said last year, Robbie, I absolutely thought was going to fall off the cliff, stolen bases.
Yeah. So surprised with your pick when I saw it.
Yeah, but he stole 29 bases, right? Like, and kind of threw
power was down.
Yep. Kind of threw my opinion out the window. He's only stole one in the spring, which I don't think is an alarming number yet. But he did talk about it in the offseason, and I saw it in multiple publications where he's like, I'm just going to steal as many bases as I can. And so it sounds like he wants to run. and it sounds like he's going to try to run. And maybe that's why Atlanta tried to trade him in the offseason, because they had the same concerns that I do. But, ultimately, I think there's a guy with upside on the stolen bases. And I don't have a bunch of targets on the NL side outside of guys that are nobodies that had decent springs, right? So there's just not a lot of stolen base targets because we haven't seen it over the last couple of years. So this is a difficult category to pick. So I'll stick with something that's reasonably safe.
I think we're primed for a bunch of new names to hit the list, though. That's the thing. Like,
I
whether
agree.
you want to say it's the stolen bases, it's the throwing over rule, pick your poison as to why. I think we're just going to see some new guys who are like, hey, this guy's got 25 and this guy's got 20. And, for the NL, the possibility, like you said, Acuna, I think a Corbin Carroll could be up there in the 30, but I didn't want to give too much credit, knowing that I want him to be getting runs. Obviously, he's going to need to be getting in scoring position for that, but I didn't want to go hand in hand like I did with some of my other categories. But I think Trey Turner is in an amazing position with the Phillies to just be locked and loaded for stolen bases. And the reason being is that he's going to move himself around to get in position. And once there's two outs, I bet he becomes very aggressive on the base paths, because he would probably prefer to get caught trying to steal to get into scoring position than he would a force out at, say, second or third. He'd rather put that gap between. That's just, the gamer mentality, right? We all saw how exciting it was in the World Baseball Classic with Trey Turner just doing his thing. He's hitting bombs and doing all those other things. Guy also steals bases. Excellent base runner too. You didn't mention your AL guy.
Oh yeah, we skipped over him. My bad. Yeah, I went Sturry Ruiz is a guy that is the reason Pache is getting dumped. So this is a guy that runs like the wind. It's just the only thing that stopped him from stealing bases is that he hasn't had playing time. So for me on the AL side, Robbie, I think it's an absolute race between the two guys that we have. It's Bubba and Asturi, and I think it comes down to one thing: who plays the most games. I really do. I think it's that simple for those two guys, because I don't think there's anybody else even in the same category of stolen bases as these two. So, I think that they're in a tier of their own. I think it's going to come down to those two. I think on the AL win side, I find it really interesting on your pick, Robbie. Robbie Ray is a guy that's going to get some wins, no doubt, in Seattle. I went Dylan Cease in Chicago. Both teams are teams that are expected to be reasonably good. Seattle's supposed to be really good. Talk to me about Robbie Ray and win totals, because it's never been his big MO.
Yeah, so here's the thing. He just needs to get 15 outs, and then he's in position for the win. Seattle is very good at the baseball. Their bullpen is even better, more experienced than last year, even though they lost Eric Swanson, lost air quotes, because with relief pitchers, there's some volatility, which is, again, another strength of the Mariners bullpen. If they do have some volatility, they got enough guys, high-end guys, that they should be able to still close out games. So if Ray leaves with the lead, more often than not, he's going to end up getting the win. And I think this could just be one of those years where we see 18 to 20 wins, because the Mariners are going to win 90 plus. The balanced schedule, instead of the AL West beating the crap out of each other with, Texas and Houston going at it, and the Angels hopefully being competitive too, and everybody just like taking it to Oakland, they're going to spread it out a bit more. They're going to have some NL East games. They're going to beat up on the Pirates in the Central, the Reds, and could be, less competitive than we'd like. And that's an opportunity again for Robbie Ray to pick up some more wins. He also has played in the NL West for a lot of years, so he's going to be comfortable when he's going into, Dodger Stadium, playing against the Diamondbacks. I think this is just going to be a bit of a perfect storm for Robbie Ray's win total for this year. Call it J.A. Happ kind of come together win total season when Happ 120.
So one of the big concerns I have with Seattle in general, they were 27th in Major League Baseball last year in hits.
They addressed that.
Did they?
Yeah, Cooper
brought
Hummel.
In Teo. Yeah, no, Cooper Hummel is not the answer to being 27th.
Well, 26th with him.
Teoscar does a little bit more to help that.
Yeah. Also not losing all the at-bats to Kelnick and Kyle Lewis, not play the outfield in general, just being better. Mitch Haniger was also not good last year with Seattle. They've hopefully just improved through losing a few dudes more than it was improved by gaining Teoscar.
Yeah, I'm still out on their premium success. Like they're
Okay.
still a good base. They're still a good baseball team, but they're the one team that like everybody has in the playoffs that I think could miss. That I think because there is a bit of an upper tier in the AL. They're in it currently. They're just that's my big concern. They're not anything that they can't work through or improve on. Just that's the one flag there. The White Sox had an awful time last year, injuries across the board. Dylan Cease was a bright spot. I think he just twirls it. He's going to have strikeouts. He's going to get wins, and I think he's as good a candidate as anybody in the AL to be the wins leader. So I like that one. On the NL side, I went Corbin Burns. It's about as safe as bet as you're going to find on the NL side. You can go with the old guys in New York, but I'm going to bet on somebody in the prime and somebody that's pissed, right? He's pissed about his arbitration thing, which is funny because like you went to arbitration, like you're an idiot if you walk into that and don't think people are going to try to win and say whatever they take. Like, I think they're going to come in there like, hey, you want some cotton candy while we go through this, or like, what were you expecting, dude? So that's one thing, but I do like the chip on his shoulder that I'm going to bet on, and that's why I like him to be the NL wins leader.
Well, I did go with one of the old guys on the Mets. I've taken Max Scherzer. No disrespect to Verlander, but I feel like Mad Max is due for a full season. And when he gets that full season of 30 plus starts, we're going to see 18 plus wins because the Mets are very good. Even losing Diaz, which is terrible, didn't obliterate their bullpen. They still have other guys with closing experience. David Robertson is one, Ottavino, and of course I got to get in my Brooks Raley conversations whenever I can. So there are guys who can help to keep the Mets in the lead when they have the lead. So it's Max for me. But on to saves, Ty. We can say the NL since we both had the same guy. I really like Milwaukee's ability to win games in a lot of different ways this year. We're not so sure exactly what they're going to do as far as matchups. You know, Craig Counsell's got a big job ahead of him this year, managing all those players that he's been given. But he'll never have to waver on the bullpen and the guy that ends the game in Devin Williams. And I think that's a compliment to him that they were willing to trade Josh Hader last year. Yes, there was a bit of a money issue potentially going to happen this year with it, but also the fact that they were a playoff team who traded away their closer when the team wanted them to be adding guys. They said, no, we can do it without him, this all-star, and this is our guy. And I think he's going to lead the NL in saves. You agree?
My favorite thing about Devin Williams is that he throws the same changeup grip as I do, and it just makes me happy to say that I throw the airbender. I'm super happy about it. He throws it significantly better, but
okay.
You know, it still makes me happy. And I've been on Devin Williams for years. This is a guy that I've liked for a long time, and have owned in a lot of places. But I like Milwaukee's chances to be a playoff team. I think with any injuries in the AL or the NL East, I think the Brewers are going to be a playoff team. I don't think they make it without some help. So Devin, if they do get there, it's going to be partly on the back of Devin Williams, and that's going to be interesting. K leaders, we talked about these guys already, so we can skate through this one pretty quick. ALK leaders, Robbie had Robbie Ray. I had Dylan Cease in line with our win totals. NL side, Robbie went with the other old guy in Justin Verlander. So,
well, let me very quickly just tell you, I don't want to slow this down at all, but like Justin Verlander has had seasons with 269 Ks, 219, 250, 239, 217, 254, 219, 290, 300, and then last year 185. Coming back from Tommy John, I think we're in for a big Verlander K season, and I'm excited for it. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little scared of the age. I'm not gonna lie to you. I do like him as a.
He's my age. What do you mean? We're the same age. Justin Verlander and I are basically the same guy.
It goes without saying that doesn't bode well for Justin Verlander.
Wait, what? Why? Just because it hurts when I stand up?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. So I went with the complete opposite and a young guy, and this one actually hurt me because I'm not.
I'm
huge
so curious
fan
with this pick from you.
I just think the strikeouts are there. Like it's just that simple. I wouldn't pick him in any other category except for this one.
Okay.
But Spencer Strider in Atlanta, I do think he's still going to get strikeouts because the fastball slider combo is excellent. I don't think Atlanta has enough reason to move him out of the rotation. It would a lot of things would have to happen for them to give up on the guy they just extended. So I think all that bodes for 200 strikeouts in the bank, and I think that's the easiest guy to bet on for me. A young guy that has strikeout numbers with 2 really really good pitches. So I like that one. Next category, AL MVP is probably the easiest one on the board here, Robbie. One with Shohei Ohtani. This one, I will say this. I want the AL MVP and MVP in general to be the guy that impacts the team making the playoffs the most. Like, I don't care how many positions they play or what their stats are. I just want the award to go to the most important guy on the roster for the teams that make the playoffs. Like, that's what that award is supposed to be, and it's become this other thing. And Ohtani is brings that all to light as to what's wrong with the way they're voting for that award right now. It's no knock on Ohtani because he's obviously legendary player, even in the brief window that we've seen him be legendary. But it is a problem with the award for me. But Ohtani's awesome, so there's no arguments on Ohtani being the selection there.
Yeah, I'm with you. On the NL side, I think, like I said earlier, a lot's going to come together for Trey Turner this year, including an MVP award, especially as the season wears on. When he gets back Harper, or not gets back, I guess it'll be, goes back to playing with Harper again. They were once teammates with the Nationals, winning a World Series title. It's just going to make the team even better, and then him even better. And I think it's just going to all come together this year for Trey.
Yeah, I went with Manny Machado because it's probably his last season before Tatis wins 10 straight MVPs. So Machado just had to be picked. Machado just had to be chosen here. And I said it earlier, I think this is going to be Machado's best season. I just think all the pieces are there for it to be the year for him. So I like that. Next up, AL Cy Young Award. We both doubled down on the Ohtani one. This one hurt me a little bit, Robbie, to pick him as it knowing he's not going to get the full innings. It's no knock again on Ohtani, but I think there's you look at a Cease, you look at the rest of the AL, like there's just not those dominant guys that should run away with this award, right? So that's my big issue. Like, you've got a couple guys that could certainly make it harder for Ohtani to come away with it. But if he pitches 180 innings, which is possible, I think he wins this award. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think there's other guys that need to pitch 200, 210 and do a lot of things and have a big body of work. I think Ohtani needs to go out and have, 18 quality starts, 14 plus wins, and the Angels to, like you said about the MVP, the Angels to be a good team. And in doing that, Ohtani's going to get the wins. He's also going to, at that point in time, have 230 Ks in 180 innings because he's just going to be blowing it by guys because he's such a gamer. We saw it in the WBC. We've seen it in previous years. Like, this guy just loves to dominate in baseball. And I think this year's going to come together. Now, I took a chance here. I took a swing with my Cy Young in the NL. I went with Nick Lodolo. Ty, you have to support this decision because you said you like him. And one of the reasons why is I think he might get himself a lot of respect this year because I think the Reds rotation, Ashcroft part of this, might prove the Reds to be better than they're supposed to be. And Lodolo could be one of those guys who once upon a time, you had your ace of your staff emerge and you'd get on a 2 or 3 game losing skid and he'd come up and you're like, oh, good. Now we've got some help today. I think Lodolo is going to be that guy for the Reds. Yes, they've got Hunter Green as well. There are good things that could come in Cincinnati with the young guys all hanging out together. And I think Lodolo could just break out this year. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying Lodolo breakout. Let's go.
I love Lodolo, but it is 1 year too early for Cy Young, in my opinion. Conversations for him, but I do think he's on that path. I like leader in the clubhouse, Lodolo fan club over here, so no arguments there. I went with Burns. I stayed on the chip on the shoulder. I think he's going to ratchet himself up for a run at free agency here, and I think he's going to continue to build that body of work that we want to see from Corbin Burns. And listen, like, this is a guy that you and I talked about the breakouts before. Like, I mean, this is not something that we haven't been in on, and I think this is one where he's got 2 more seasons here before the free agent year. And so I think he's going to have a solid finish to his Milwaukee career, and he's going elsewhere. Like, that's a foregone conclusion. Milwaukee doesn't pay these guys. That's just the way they run their team. So starting to build their AL Rookie of the Year. This is a fun one, Robbie. I'll let you tee off your first one here because we talked about him earlier in the show, and I know you've got some notes prepped.
Yeah, Oscar Colas with the White Sox. I'm just excited that he's up, and as I kind of alluded to earlier, I think that the idea behind his promotion to the team is that he's going to stick with them for the year, so he does need to come out swinging. But I'm just assuming he's going to, because why not, right? Take advantage of your opportunity, young man. And I think if he does that, the White Sox are a good team. I don't know that I trust the pitching all the way through. I don't know that I trust the bullpen all the way through, but I trust the offense for the White Sox to be good, put up 4+ runs safely, have a lot of those 7-8 run games. And Colas could be on the receiving end of a lot of runs, those extra at bats too. And I just think it could be a really good fit for him start of the year without picking somebody who I just think could be promoted, in whatever, May. Picking someone out of the gate like Colas, to me, is a fun bet, a safe bet also. Who you got, Ty?
This is my breakout guy for the whole year. I own him literally in every league that I'm in, except for one, Robbie. And I love this guy, Josh Jung in Texas, a guy that was top of the food chain in the Rangers system, had a shoulder surgery. Everybody forgot about him, Robbie, and has fallen off a lot of boards. But this guy is going to probably, in all likelihood, get sandwiched somewhere in this lineup in a really, really good spot. Texas faces a really interesting problem with their lineup construction, because Marcus Semien likes to hit leadoff when he shouldn't. They've got him slotted 1. Then you're going to go Seager, Nathaniel Lowe, back-to-back lefties. That I'm not so sure that that's the way they're going to build that roster. You might see a tough discussion where Semien moves into that 2-hole so that they can go righty, lefty, righty. And I think Josh Jung finds himself in that 4-hole and not Adolis Garcia, which some people might think is the right option. So Josh Jung's a better contact hitter. All of the projections on batting average are way too low. I like 270 for him. I like 25 bombs, and I like Rookie of the Year title on that one.
All right. That's very interesting. On the NL side, the Jung of the AL, you've picked the Jung of the NL in Mr. Walker. Do you need to explain it, or do we all just understand Jordan Walker? Why not?
Yeah. Yep. I think he's just the guy. Yep. For me.
Okay. I went with the outside pick, with the outside man, with James Outman of the Los Angeles Dodgers. All he's done, Ty, is hit. He is like the DJ Khaled of the West Coast. All he does is win, 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 no matter what. He doesn't lose weight because all he does is win. Thank you. Anyway, just big average guy. He's on the Dodgers. Miguel Vargas would be the pick of the rookies that people really like out there. I'm saying no. Go with, I think he's the 25-year-old Outman, experienced AAA bat, did very well last year in his little, tea sandwich that he came up and had with the Dodgers before he was demoted back. Tea sandwich is back, baby. And I think Outman is going to be able to get some decent playing time. Chris Taylor could move around, and Outman, Betts, and Trace Thompson can be getting time in that outfield. So
I only have two questions for you, Robbie. What happens when Poggies comes up? And the other one is if Corbin Carroll leads the league in runs, he's winning Rookie of the Year.
We'll see. We'll see. All right, we'll see. There's important things that happen with James Outman as a player, and there's one stat that Corbin Carroll might be able to bank on. So we'll just have to see. And if it's a popularity contest, Outman has already lost. But luckily it's not. It's up to some baseball like people. So anyway, Ty, manager of the year. This is the worst category. So I tried to pick guys who I thought had work to do this year. In the AL, I went with Terry Francona with Cleveland, because it's not easy to manage the back end of like what they did last year with their outfielders, and having, I guess it was almost 6 guys from previous years who were not MLBers become MLBers, some with other teams. Alex Call amongst that, Alex Call made Washington's opening day roster as the backup outfielder. Love it. But anyway, Francona was able to take homegrown Guardian outfielders and make them legit players. I think he's got a tough job to do this year. Managing the bullpen is going to be interesting for him until he gets to the 9th, and working through that rotation and all the wonky starters they've got. So I think he's got a tough job to do, but he's also got a lot of talent to work with. And that's really the job, right? Managing the talent, which is much more your pick than mine as far as the top end guys go. But for me, it's Francona.
Yeah, and for me, I think there's a story for MLB on my selection, and it plays the way I think the AL is going to play out a little bit. Talking about Judge earlier with the injury that I'm predicting for him, I think the Yankees missed the playoffs. I think that's the one thing that I'm kind of got on my predictions. Their offense was woeful last year, and you're adding a lot of youth to it this year. I don't think it gets a significant amount better. Like if Judge isn't Judge last season, they missed the playoffs. And so, for me, the Yankees are susceptible right now. And I think that's part of why I have John Schneider, the manager of the Blue Jays. The assumption is that Toronto could win that division. There's an outside shot. Kevin Cash in Tampa Bay wins that division. If that's the case, Cash is going to win the manager of the year. There's the only other guy for me, Robbie, I don't think Francona's in the playoffs either. But the only other guy for me that I think has an outside shot, who's not even on my list of playoff teams that we're going to mention next, would be in Los Angeles Angels. I don't even know who their coach is these days. Off the top of my head, why don't I know this?
Angels manager? No, I'm blanking.
Yeah,
I'll look it up.
Yeah, whoever that guy is, new John Madden. Or Joe Madden, sorry, it would be the guy that I would pick, because I do think if the Angels can get decent bullpen help, right? They need to make a trade here at the end of spring to add to their bullpen. If they can do that, the Angels can make the playoffs, and that would be the other guy that could win this award. But if not, I think it goes to an ALS team, and I'm picking Schneider.
Phil Nevin, former Oakland Athletic.
I knew it was a baseball player.
So
I just couldn't think of who it was. Yep.
Yeah, a quality manager there. Now off to the NL. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to cue the NL, so you take it away.
Okay. Off to the NL. The story of a team that does very well is the story of a manager who does their job. We've already alluded to the difficulty ahead for Craig Counsell in Milwaukee, dealing with Platoon City, whatever they're going to end up calling it. Plus, he's got a lot of young, studly outfielders. And he also has that former MVP in Christian Yelich, plus that dynamic rotation. I think he's going to not screw it up, which is really the job of the manager, and win NL Manager of the Year. Who do you have, Ty?
I've got Snicker in Atlanta again. I just think that's the guy. I think the one thing Atlanta has that a lot of these other NL contenders do not is pitching depth, right? You've got Mike Soroka coming back. You've got Schuster breaking out. You've got Dodd who can do the job, but you've got guys in the wings still after that. Ian Anderson's there. I just think the starting rotation for Atlanta with that offense is going to put them at the top of that division. Everyone has the Mets. I don't see it, Robbie. Like I don't think the Mets are that team. I'm not entirely sure that bullpen can hold up if they have any injury in their rotation. I just don't know that they can get it done. So. I know David Peterson won a lot of people's hearts this spring. I got into it with Cross on Twitter today about some top 40 predictions.
I saw
but sorry, Eric, but I don't agree. Anyway, no hard feelings. The issue here is mostly just that I just don't think the Mets are as good as everybody thinks they are. With the possible graduation, a couple of their young guys could change that. But given they want to give the vets some time, I have some concerns with that roster. So I got Atlanta in that spot.
All right. I mean, that's fine. So playoff teams in total here, Ty. AL playoff teams, I'm thinking that we've got division winners. It's a toss-up, Tampa Bay, New York. For me, I'm going to just say the Yankees for the sake of giving a division winner. Let's give Seattle the nod here in the NL, or sorry, in the AL West, but I also think Texas and Houston sneak in, and then the other team is Cleveland, who take the Central. Who are you thinking are the playoff teams in the AL?
Yeah, I've got Toronto, Chicago White Sox, and Houston winning their divisions. I like Tampa, Seattle, and Texas in behind that. Aforementioned New York missing, which is going to be different from a lot of boards. I mean, I'm always going to bet against the Yankees, Robbie. It's a default position for me. But I do have concerns. Like, they don't have the depth that everybody thinks. They've got some that's right there or a year away, or I just don't think it's enough to support the massive holes they still have in that lineup. So, injuries to Stanton, Judge, any of the starting rotation, which we've already seen, all of a sudden they're mediocre, right? And so that's really the issue with the Yankees for me, is that they're really, really too susceptible. So that's where I'm at.
All right. On the NL side, I've got the Mets to get the division. I also have the Milwaukee Brewers to take the Central and the Dodgers to take the West, with San Diego, St. Louis, and Atlanta as wild card teams. Yourself?
Yeah, I got ATL taking the East, St. Louis in the Central, and the Dodgers in the West. I will say this: like, if the Padres get solid pitching, which is definitely a stretch, they could definitely win the West. The bullpen's good enough. The rotation needs some breakout guys. They need health from guys like Adrian Morejon. They need potentially Cole Hamels. They need potentially, crazily enough, Julio Teheran to maybe make some of this happen. But I do think offensively they're the best team in the NL. So it's just a matter of deciding what kind of pitching for them to be either the division winner or the wildcard team. The other teams that are going to get in behind them, I like the Mets to still make the playoffs. I like one of the Dodgers, the Padres, and I like Philly in the East as well.
Yeah,
I like what Philly did in their bullpen, by the way.
Yeah, I was deciding
Side note.
between Philly and San Diego for my spot, and I'm like, because both have shaky rotations, and I thought, well, if it all falls apart, San Diego can still win games ugly, and I don't know that if it all falls apart, Philly will still win games ugly, because I don't see the starting pitcher depth unless they're going to go ahead and burn Painter and bring up Abel and McGriff, the crime dog, unless they're going to just empty it out, which, I mean, Dombrowski could, but I also think Cole Hamels is now with Philly, and I'm not sure if that's official, but I thought I had read that it was stated that he would help the MLB team at some point this year. So whether he moved at the end or not, I could have just been reading the wrong thing. I mean, he was a longtime Philly, so it's possible that I just messed that up. But anyway, Ty, who do you have in the World Series, and who's your champ?
Cool. Two days ago, Cole Hamels looks to join Padres in June. That's the target.
Oh, okay. So I just, okay, brainwashed then.
Oh, yep, all good. Sorry, we're NL teams in the World Series, or teams in the World Series in general.
Your World
I like
Series
Houston.
teams and who wins. Yep.
Yeah, I like Houston. I like San Diego because I think with this roster, I think they're going to go all in. And I think they still have one or two pieces to sell if they want to. And I think if they get the depth, or not the depth, but if they get the momentum that I think they're going to have, I think they'll go chase a starting pitcher. And listen, like, with that offense, they don't need to go get aces, right? They just don't. And that's the one advantage that they have. So I like them to be in it. I'm going to bet on Houston. They've been there for 3 of the last 4. I'll continue to bet on them until they prove me wrong.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't let them in my playoff pitcher. That way I don't have to deal with them. They're going to be a one and done this year. That's what Houston's doing, because Milwaukee and Cleveland are going to be the World Series teams here, Ty. And that has a lot to do with the 2 managers that I gave of the year. It has to do with Josh Bell having a complete and full season, and it has to do with guys like Williams closing out games. But I do think Cleveland will take it. Congratulations, Guardians, in 6. That is my World Series prediction. And oh my goodness, the extra money in Cleveland will make trading away players even more painful for Guardians fans in the years to come. Extra revenue from winning a World Series, and they just turn around, pocket the cash, and trade players in the offseason.
They've waited so long for a world championship, and then they're just gonna fire sale it. Oh yeah. Man, that
pull a Marlins.
I'd love to see it. Like, I mean, my grandpa was a diehard Guardians fan, and he passed away this year. So, that would make sense that they do it while he's checking in on it. Angels in the outfield style. Let's do it. But I like the Guardians. Not enough to make the playoffs, but I like their momentum. So we'll see if they get there. But it's a good spot to leave it, Robbie. If you've got different predictions, by all means, hit us up on the Twitter machine at DingersPod. Let's hear it. Let's hear your bold takes. Just don't tell me SP5s are in the top 40, and we'll be fine. And until then, it's been Tyler and Rob here on Dingers.